I'll be the first to say it. Perhaps we should have considered Patrick Stewart for the Best Supporting Actor Oscar nomination. What's up? Welcome back. I'm John Stark from MacMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic, and I'm taking a second look at Logan because of Deadpool and Wolverine, currently now in theaters. Yes, I actually already reviewed every other X-Men film, whether it had audio description or not, in congruence with X-Men 97. So if you want to know anything else about any of the other X-Men films or X-Men Origins Wolverine or The Wolverine, uh, The New Mutants, I did all of those films already. So this is Logan, which I saved for the time with the release of this. Today I'm wearing a black baseball cap backwards, I've got black sunglasses, and I'm wearing a Ghostbusters shirt. So nothing that has anything to do with Wolverine. Sorry. I have seen Logan. It was actually a little bit before I found out I was losing my vision. So yeah, it's the year of losing vision. It's at the beginning part of the year, and I know what this film looks like. And when the audio description came up, I was able to sort of use those memories to figure out, is this what happened? Is this accurate? Is this a good portrayal of what is happening on screen? And my answer would be yes. There are a couple scenes that somebody who hasn't seen the film before, or someone who doesn't like spoilers, may question, and we'll talk about those. But this is directed by James Mangold, stars Hugh Jackman, Patrick Stewart, Stephen Merchant, and Daphne Keane. And this is about Wolverine. I believe it's based on the Old Man Logan comic book, where it sort of surmises that perhaps it's possible for this mutant who, if you remember sort of his history as flashback, he's been around a while. So he's not exactly the age that he looks, he's actually much older. But because he has a regenerative power that's been healing him all of these years, he's been able to live to this incredible age. But he's way older. He's older than Professor X, so he wouldn't look it at all. But that's the nature of his power. His healing factor gives him that ability. So, but at some point, the question was, can he live forever? Or like, when does the human body finally win out against healing factor? And that's how we got Logan. It's got a lot of sort of like Western influence to it, in terms of, I mean, there are direct references to Shane here, and a little bit of that sort of like standoffish, a lot of people coming onto their porch and get off my property, some of those things. Basically, the plot of the film is that all the mutants are dead, some event occurred, and Professor X is not in his right mind all of the time, and he has these fits. And because he's such a powerful mutant, it affects everyone else. So Wolverine is trying to do his best to care for Professor X, much the same way anybody would care for their parent or anyone else who was elderly and, a little bit of dementia slash senility in there. But he is also quite functioning throughout several scenes in the film. So it's not always, it comes and goes. But he does have these little sort of strokes where his powers just create problems. And he has visions. One of his visions is of a little girl. And, you know, they laugh it off and they're like, I don't know what this is. He's getting help from Caliban, which is, in retrospect, the weirdest thing that the film does is getting help from Caliban, because what? So, um, I still believe the X-Men franchise is one of those things everybody jokes about, because it's like, what is the timeline? What is timeline? Like, it's literally, it's one of those weird things where you just go, I don't even know anymore, man. Like, I don't think anybody thinks about that. I think they gave up on trying to make these films make sense within the structure. And it just, like, it's a series that has needed a hard reset for a while now. um, but in X-Men Apocalypse, Caliban is in X-Men Apocalypse, which would make Caliban really old here, because remember, that was the younger version of Cyclops and Jean Grey before they eventually catch up to the older version of Wolverine. So he is featured in Dark Phoenix against, I think he has I'm right about that. I think it was Dark Phoenix where he has his cameo, and he's there for like 2 seconds. Maybe it was Apocalypse. It's one of those two films anyway. So it's like, yeah, Hugh Jackman is still in this universe. So they confirmed it, and which means Caliban is in this universe, which means what the fuck is up with Stephen Merchant's like age, because Caliban does not have healing factor. That is not his power. That is not what he does. In Apocalypse, he's used as somebody who can tell what your power is. Like he can tell if you're a mutant and what your power is. That's his sort of thing. It's a little bit what they gave to Denia Ramirez's Callisto in X-Men The Last Stand, which is not really her character's power, but they just gave it to her. Like, anyway, so Caliban's already been established, and it's like, you had a ton of mutants that you could have used, and you used somebody who was already used in another movie, and then you cast them either the same age as they were, so that they're ageless, or actually maybe even younger than the guy who originally played it in X-Men Apocalypse. So I don't really fully understand the Caliban thing. But that's because when you look at it from a larger angle, it makes no sense. You're like, when you try to look at the X-Men films, you're like, what? But like within the context of the film, it's still weird. It's like, Wolverine went to Caliban? What a weird random pick to have him. Anyway, but Caliban is here, and to help, mainly because the plot necessitates his powers later on in the film. So yeah, that's the thing. He's not great at figuring out X-23 though. So it's like, what is? They don't even really, like, his powers are used here where they need it to be. It's one of the things that, like, when I've watched Logan multiple times and I'm like less starry-eyed by the original experience, I'm like, what the fuck is going on with Caliban? Like, I love the rest of the film, but I'm just like, he's just a plot device. He's not a real character. He's just like, you just introduce a mutant and give them powers, and you give them a name from the comic books, and then you go, well, comic book fans will like it because he's a character. Like, I actually had a Caliban X-Men figure from way back in my childhood. So I'd love at some point for him to get the character design that he had. That would have been cool. But now he just looks like a regular dude. Neither here nor there. It's like, I don't know what we're doing with Stephen Merchant here, but he's part of the thing. So there's a girl that's gone missing, and there's a guy that's looking for her and thinks that Logan knows where she is, and Logan's like, listen, man, I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. Leave. You know, because at first he really doesn't. And then later on, the paths cross. It's like for some reason, these people knew that this girl and her caretaker would be headed to Wolverine. And even Professor X hints at it. And eventually you learn out that the girl is played by Daphne Keane, and she has a name, uh, Lara, and most comic book fans will know her as X-23, as in terms of her, who she is in relation to the comics. Um, and Wolverine eventually has to contend with who X-23 is, what this means for him. There hasn't been a mutant childbirth in years, and I wouldn't really call this that, because X-23 really is a clone of Wolverine. So it's a girl, you know what I'm saying? But it's Wolverine's powers. She has 2 claws instead of 3, which makes her slightly different. So there's like some slight alterations, but basically they modeled her after Wolverine. The weird thing is, I think she has adamantium, and not bone claws, and adamantium is not his power. So I don't know how that happens for her, but it's, it was a pretty painful process for Wolverine. Um, anyway, uh, so yeah, it's a road trip movie. It's a, you know, last stand type of film for Logan. It's definitely his final hurrah. Um, it's it was intended to be Hugh Jackman's final film as Wolverine. It was all that stuff, and it's really good for James Mangold, who directed The Wolverine. Um, he really kind of upped his game here with Logan, and directed a film that looks great, sounds great, has amazing performances. Patrick Stewart is somebody who, it's funny that we all agree he's a great actor. He's Sir Patrick Stewart, and I think we've never really had the opportunity to recognize him in film, because he's either in like Star Trek or X-Men films. And like but like on stage he gets lauded, but on film we're just like, oh, he's in these silly genre films. Maybe we could find a way to, this man should have an Oscar nomination. um he's of that caliber, easily, and we should have figured out by now what to nominate him for. It's like Ian McKellen has a nomination for playing Gandalf. Why can't Patrick Stewart have a nomination for playing Charles Xavier? This doesn't make any sense. Um, he's excellent here as a much different, much older version of Charles Xavier. And Hugh Jackman, honestly, is giving one of his best performances, because it's a character he's lived in for so long that he understands Wolverine. He is Wolverine. And now he has to be the aging version of Wolverine that's contemplating life, death, whatever that means for him, while trying to do right by Charles Xavier, holding up the memory of the X-Men, all that kind of stuff. Like the weight of the world is on this man's shoulders, and you feel it in like every single scene and every single frame. And he's just exhausted. And it's a really great performance from Hugh Jackman. As far as the audio description translating, this is not, I would say it's not a gory film, it's a bloody film. I think those are two really specific things. Gory films, you know, are, I'm going to rip out your guts and intestines, we're going to blow you up and spill guts everywhere, we're going to, you know, it's the grotesqueness behind it. There are a couple decapitations, which is surprising for this universe, but it was also surprising that this movie did well at the box office, because everybody had sort of been resistant to going there with the X-Men. But when you did, you found out the audience went there with you. So the fact that he actually chops things off, because he's a man with adamantium claws, so he's bound to actually eventually do some damage and some bloodletting. And this audio description track absolutely does embrace that and lean into that. Um, as far as some of the stuff where you may question it, this gets even a little bit more spoiler than I've already gotten so far, but there is sort of this thing with X-24, which is more of a direct clone to Wolverine, somebody who looks like a younger version of Wolverine, a little like Hugh Jackman de-aged. And at first, when he's first revealed, it's in the scene where Charles is talking to him, and I remember the scene, and I remember at first he's like in shadow, and you can't really tell that it's not the Logan that we're following. And then there's a point where you can, and you're like, oh shit, why does he look de-aged? You know? So there is a point in the audio description where it reveals the fact that this is not our Logan. And it's before he kills Charles Xavier. And I thought that audio description it may seem like it's a spoiler, like don't do that, but it is absolutely necessary, because that is exactly what happens in the theater if you're sighted, is that you do get a moment where you're like, oh shit, before it happens. And you're like, oh shit, what's he gonna do? And then you're like, oh fuck, okay, that's what he's gonna do. Because you're like, Logan didn't just go like run into the fountain of youth. we didn't miss that scene. Oh, we forgot we cut that scene where he's out there bathing in the fountain of youth. Damn. Um, so yeah, it's a younger version of him, and it's very obvious that it is like a cleaner, even like, because Logan has his shirt off, so even when you can see X-24, even like the body is younger, like everything is like fresher and newer, back from maybe when Wolverine first played him in the very first X-Men film, when Hugh Jackman way back there, that kind of stuff. So, although perhaps more jacked, because he's definitely gotten more jacked as the films have gone on. It's a good film, and it leads to an end, and there's, Logan doesn't think that this place is going to be real, that they're Eden, or I think it's Eden that they're taking him to. And lo and behold, it is. And then he has to have this final stand against this group of mercenaries to protect these kids, so that way these kids can have a future, and then that way there can be sort of a future of mutants, down the line. A lot of people were like, are we going to do an X-23 movie? Are we going to continue to follow that pattern after Logan? Is there a world for this? Sadly, no, there wasn't. We just kind of left X-23 out there and just didn't do anything with it. Daphne Keane is excellent, and whatever awards went out that year to youth performers, she should have at least been nominated, if not winning them, for any groups that were doing them. Pretty much everybody was like, this is an excellent performance, and we didn't really know where Daphne Keane came from. And she's phenomenal. And now we've seen her in more things. She was in His Dark Materials, and more recently, she was just in The Acolyte, which gave me a lot of feelings, because I felt like she was really underutilized there based on what I had seen her do previously. I was like, that was a waste of her time. That series was a waste of her time. That role was a waste of her time. We should be offering her better roles than that, especially considering she's far proven herself in terms of both acting and range, in terms of His Dark Materials, and the ability to handle herself in action sequences convincingly in Logan. So I don't know what that was. But I like Logan. I'm a big fan of Logan. And after watching it now, I would say this is at least my third time seeing it. The only question that comes up when you're talking about like film longevity is Caliban. I just keep thinking to myself, I'm like, why? Why Caliban? Like, why? And it just, it's so weird. It's so weird that it's Caliban that's there, and not someone else who just makes more sense. I mean, there's so many mutants that you could have put there. So many mutants. And you could have had somebody else on the other side who has sniffing mutant abilities. I mean, like, you just don't need, just have somebody that makes sense for Wolverine to be with. I don't know that Caliban makes sense for, like, to be hanging out with Wolverine. There's really nothing in the X-Men films that have ever lent towards that. Plus, he's way too young. So if you're trying to say it's the same Caliban from X-Men Age of Apocalypse, then it's like, why is he being played by Stephen Merchant and not, you know, somebody of Patrick Stewart's age? He should be easily in the same age range as Patrick Stewart, which could make the film way more interesting. Like, if this had been like Derek Jacobi or something like that, that would have been an excellent performance. It'd have been like, I'm Caliban, but I'm the really old version of Caliban from Age of Apocalypse. Um, yeah, okay, fine. Then I'm going down that road. But without you, it's like, I don't understand it. I don't get it. But that's a question for like writers. That's a question for like Marvel proper. That's a conversation I'll never get to have with the right people. Be like, why did you pick Caliban? Like, you have like, there are hundreds of X-Men characters and you pick Caliban. So, I don't think that that's something that James Mangold controlled. I think he directed the film as best as he could. It's just somebody made that choice for him. And then he was like, all right, so we're doing this. And I don't think he sat there and thought a lot about X-Men Apocalypse either. So I think he just directed a film. And when you take this film out of context, it's a great film. If you try to put it back into the X-Men lineup, it gets weird. It gets icky because of that. And that's all I'm saying. So Logan separately, great film, love it. I think it's one of the best films ever made. So, in terms of the X-Men timeline, it's like it's part of that joke that, what are we doing here? So, um, yeah, I'm excited to see Hugh Jackman return to his Wolverine roots in Deadpool and Wolverine. But I'm going to give Logan an A. I feel like Logan is a film that is going to maybe earn an A plus for me at some point, but it's not quite. I save those for like comfort films / desert island films. And while I love Logan, it's not something I just put on to feel better. Like, it's not, it doesn't have that. The fact that I've seen it like 3 times in 7 years is not, it's fine. Like, it's a good number for that amount of years, but I've seen other films far more than that I usually give A plus grades to. That's why I try not to give it to every single film that I think is of A caliber. So, anyway, thanks for watching. This is a little bit of a ramble, but sometimes when you already have seen something and you love it, it becomes sort of like a ramble and existential thought about like bullshit and nonsense and whatever. So, yeah, I plan on doing 2 Deadpool movies before Deadpool and Wolverine. So I will see you guys on the other side.